Hello everyone, let's continue with the explanation and analysis of the concluding part of the extract of the poem Sohrab and Rustum. As we have seen in the previous videos that the poem opens with Sohrab, the great warrior, lying wounded with his life gradually escaping from his grasp, and his father Rustum stands by him as he is struggling between life and death. And this struggle ends, and Sohrab lies motionless in the desert with a broken and distressed Rustum by his side. This was what was narrated in the first part or the opening part of the extract, which is there in your textbook. And now let's see what happens next. In the concluding part of this extract, Mathew Arnold is just portraying the surroundings, or in other words we can say that in the concluding part Mathew Arnold shifts his focus from Rustum and Sohrab and he portrays the beauty of nature. So let's see what Mathew Arnold narrates next. But the majestic river floated on out of the mist and hum of that low land into the frosty starlight, and there moved, rejoicing, through hushed Corinthian waste. Under the solitary moon, he flowed right for the polar star past Gunje. Here, Mathew Arnold is just portraying the beauty of the river Oxus, which is flowing by the side of that battlefield where the battle between Tartars and Persians has been fought, and in that battle that Sohrab, son of Rustum, is killed by his father. And here he is talking about the beauty of the river at night. Now the battle has stopped with the night, and the majestic, that grand river is just floating on without getting disturbed by what has happened on the battlefield. It is there moving on its natural course out of the fog and the humming of the lowland. Here look at the phrase humming of that lowland. This is for the humming sound or the noise which is produced by the soldiers who are now retiring to their camps, their respective camps on that lowland that is battlefield. And the river is just flowing through that very humming and through the fog, and it is just through the frosty starlight, that is say that under the dim starlight, the river is flowing under the dim starlight. Because of frost and fog, the starlight has become dim or blurred, and they are moved. It is moving on, rejoicing just happily on its natural course without getting disturbed by the tragic happening of the battlefield. It is moving, it is flowing through the hushed Corinthian waste. Here look at the word Corinthian. Students, make a note of it that Corinthian is replaced in Iran, and here the poet is referring to the sands of Corinthian battlefield, the desert of Corinthian. And one more thing is to be noted, that the waste word also refers to the dead bodies of the soldiers lying on that battlefield of Corinthian. And now that Corinthian sand, that Corinthian battlefield is just silent, is hushed, because now the battle has stopped. And through that hushed, through that silent battlefield, through that silent sands of Corinthian, the river Oxus is just moving on, just keep on flowing under the solitary moon. Now that only moon is there in the sky. I'll repeat it. There is no fight going on at present. Everything has come to the rest. There is complete silence in the battlefield, but the river that royal river, that majestic river, Oxus, keeps on flowing. And he flowed here. The pronoun he is for river Oxus, for the royal river Oxus. It is flowing right for the polar star. That it is just moving towards, it's just flowing towards the northern part of the sandy plains. Polar star is for the pole star, for the northern part. Just to show the northern direction, he has used the word polar star. That the river is just flowing toward the northern part of the sandy plains past Orgunje. Orgunje is the name of a place. So in this way, the poet is just trying to portray the majestic river, how it flows on. And through that river, the poet is actually pointing towards the attitude of nature, towards the or indifference of the nature, we can say, towards the tragic happenings which has taken place at the battlefield. So now what happens next? How the river moves on? Brimming and bright and large, then sands begin to hem his watery march and dam his streams and split his currents, that for many a league the shorn and parcelled Oxus strains along through beds of sand and matted rushy isles, Oxus forgetting the bright speed he had. Here he is just talking about the flow of the river, and the poet is to say that what happens, that the that river Oxus is just flowing towards the northern part of the sandy plains past that place Orgunje, and it is quite brimful, it is quite bright and brisk. And then what happens on its way? Then on its way the sand begins to create hem on the watery course. Here hem is for the making fence. The sands are just trying to fence its watery march, its watery flow. The flow of the river seems to be hemmed, seems to be just fenced by the sands. And this hemming, this fencing created by the sands, what happens? It seems that it dams his streams and split his currents. It just tried to obstruct, it just tried to prevent its flow. And then what happens? That the river is just flowing with all its energy, with all its pressure. The water is just flowing, and when the sands tries to begin to create hem on the watery course, what happens? That splits the currents into small streams, split his currents. The flow of the river is split into small streams. Thus we can say that the here poet intends to say that the course of the river does not stop with the ceasing of human activities, or it has any concern with what is happening around it. It just keeps on flowing, and it is not even disturbed or obstructed by the sand which tries to hem its flow. And here one thing is to be noticed, that the river Oxus has occupied an important significance in the story of Sohrab and Rustum. That's why he is calling, as in the first slide, in the opening line, he is addressing the poem as majestic river. And here he tries to be Homeric, we can say, in his expression. So the portrayal of that river is so royal and lofty. And the whole of the piece is giving expression to the grand style of, or epic style of Mathew Arnold as a poet. Now let's see what he says further about the river. That for many a league the shorn and parcelled oxus strains along. Here look at the word league. League is here for geographical mile. It's an old measure of length. And the word shorn is here for threatened. Because the sand has tried to hem, the sands have just tried to fence its flow. So it seems threatened. Shorn is for threatened, and parcelled is therefore divided. Because that the sands, Croatian sands, they have tried to hem its flow, and just it got threatened. It seemed that for a moment, and then it divided. It just divided into small streams. So parcelled is here for divided, and shorn is here for threatened. Then now he says that for many a league, for many miles, what happens? That the river Oxus just flows through a long distance, covering many miles. For many a league, that the river Oxus flows through a long distance, covering many miles through vast sandy deserts. And it just strains through beds of sand and matted rushy isles, just tough rush-like moorland grass islands. It moves through sandy deserts and the grassy islands also. Here in the plains, what happens? It flows slowly. Its speed is high near its origin in the Pamir. And this flow is meandering. Here its flow is just threatened with the sands, just tries to hem its flow. So here the poet is to say that here in the plains it flows slowly and its speed is high near its origin in the Pamir. And now how it is moving? It has just forgotten the bright speed he had. In the last line on the slide, the poet is referring to the bright speed of Oxus, which was earlier than at the place of its origin, and its place of origin is Pamir, the plateau of Pamir. So in here the poet is talking about the slow movement of the Oxus at the near the plains of Croatian. So river Oxus has forgotten its high speed at its origins in his high mountain cradle in Pamir, a foiled circuitous wanderer, till at last the longed for dash of waves is heard, and wide his luminous home of waters opens, bright and tranquil, from whose floor the new-bathed stars emerge and shine upon the Aral Sea. So the river flows a little bit slowly in the plains in comparison to its high speed at the place of its origin at Pamir. And now its slow flow at the plains is compared with a tired or baffled wanderer. Here the poet says in the second line, a foiled circuitous wanderer. Here this flow is just gets meandering as if it were a baffled wanderer in wilderness, in confusion, and after covering a considerable distance, long distance, it just reaches its home that longed for dash of waves. In the plains it was moving slowly and ultimately it reaches at that very place where that dashing sound, that waves striking against the seashore, that sound is just audible. So it reaches its destination. where its currents, where its stream meet the dashing waves of the sea, and its bright home opens wide his luminous home of waters. Its bright home opens arms to take it into its fold. How beautifully the poet has portrayed the scene of the meeting of the river with the sea, and the sea is portrayed as the bright home for the river, and that bright home opens its arms to take the river into its fold, and thus the flowing pace of the river comes to a halt, bright and tranquil, it comes to a halt, and it is transformed into bright and calm surface of the Aral Sea. And it is the place, the Aral Sea is the place where new bed stars emerge or appear. That is to say that it is the home of great persons, great souls. The stanza, in this way, this stanza is just, we can say here, it is dedicated to the river and the meeting of the river with the Aral Sea. And here the new bathed star is for the great souls. The poet has, in other words, we can say that here Mathew Arnold has tried to present river Oxus as a metaphor of life. The origin of the river symbolizes childhood, and the middle course is the full-blooded life, and the fall is the end, when the soul merges in the vast sea. So here the metaphor of mountain cradle in the first line on this slide is also appealing, and in the second line it continues with the simile of a failed circuitous wanderer. And on the whole the description is very classic, but one can see that it shows Mathew Arnold's love for nature, and particularly he holds a high regard for nature. And here in this extract, the portrayal of, or this beautiful description of the river culminates in the magnificent finale as the river Oxus moves regardless and just on towards the Aral Sea. So in this way, in this extract, Mathew Arnold has portrayed the tragic end of Sohrab and the distress of his father, and also the attitude of nature or the surroundings when this tragic event happened in the battlefield in this extract. Thank you.